We always think, oh, it's just going to be one more client, right? I bring in one more client and that's going to make the difference. That's going to be what's going to allow me to take money home and to have it available in this way. But the reality is that you get one more client and that doesn't do it. Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today my guest is Justin Buonomo. Justin is the founder and CEO of Journey to Financial Freedom, dedicated to empowering business owners to achieve their dream lifestyle through financial mastery, with a passion for helping business owners live their dream lives, fueled and funded by their dream business. Justin believes in the transformation power of taking control of your financial destiny. Driven by this conviction, Justin and his team at Journey to Financial Freedom provide unparalleled financial coaching and consulting services, equipping business owners with proven systems and strategies to optimize personal and business finances, scale their businesses correctly, and attain true autonomy and freedom through intention, strategy, and hard work. Justin helps business owners unlock new levels of success in both their personal and professional lives. Justin resides in Cockeysville, Maryland. I don't know. You'll have to help me with that one. With his wife, 2 dogs, and daughter, Peyton. Now, I went to Justin's LinkedIn profile, and it's got his name, Justin Buonomo, and underneath it says husband, father, man of God, finance expert. And I think that really what struck me is just the order of those, right? Husband and father, man of God, and then a finance expert. I think we all need to remember why we're doing what we're doing, what is important to us. I'm excited to jump into a conversation with Justin because, I mean, this is right up the alley of what we talk about here on Profit with Law. You can't focus on profitability if you don't know what your numbers are. You can't figure out how well you're doing if you don't know what your numbers are. And business owners make the mistake of checking their bank balance, right? And making decisions from what's in the bank balance. And that's why I love the book Profit First, which I'm a Profit First professional. We talk about it plenty on the show here. But I'm excited to hear what Justin is doing with his clients, how he's educating his clients on the financials of the business, but also the personal side. So many people, they just go through life swiping credit cards and paying their bills at the end of the month. And not really having a plan or a system to make sure that they're intentional with what they're doing with their money. And I think that Justin's going to help us kind of paint that picture and see if we get some new ideas that you might be able to implement for yourself. So really excited to jump into this conversation. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you having me. I know we talked a little bit before we hit the record button, but based on everything you said and what we talked about earlier, I think today's going to be super valuable for the audience.
Awesome. I start really simple and easy. Most people listening to this podcast have not heard of Justin Buonomo. So fill in the gaps. How in the world did you become a finance expert? What is, what's that journey look like? And what are you doing with people now? Or if you want, just talk about Peyton, either one.
I'm sure we'll talk about Peyton, who's my daughter, plenty, and big part of the motivation and the why now, even before she existed 5 months ago. But like taking it back to my childhood, I think is kind of where this story started. And so when I was 10 years old, my parents filed for bankruptcy for the second time. And because of that, and a couple of other things, that led to some other losses, which was they ended up getting a divorce. We lost our house and we even lost both of our cars. And so when my parents went to go move to a new home, they just filed for bankruptcy, right? And so they couldn't buy a home. Beggars couldn't be choosers, right? And so the rental properties that they got approved for didn't allow pets. At the time, I had a 3-year-old dog who I literally had to give away, right? And right then and there, what seemed to be because of money, I lost the majority of my life, it felt like, for a 10-year-old. And though I couldn't articulate it as accurately or maybe sophisticated, as I'm saying it now, I just really realized right then and there, I made a decision that like, I'm not going to let money impact my family, especially when I can control it one day, right? I was never going to let my family, when I got older, go through what I went through when I was younger. And a big part of it for me was like, it was avoidable. That was really the hard part for me to wrap my head around. At the time, my parents made like $150,000 combined. And this is like the late 90s, early 2000s. Right. And they were good people, right? Good looking, great jobs, high school all-stars when it comes to, athletics, just well-rounded humans. And I'm like, what happened here? And so as I grew older, I realized it really wasn't the piece of paper or the piece of plastic called money. It was the human being behind it that decided to misuse and abuse it, whether it was intentional or subconscious. And so, I kept that promise to myself as I got older. Like, once I start making money, I will never let my family have the same worries. But as I got older, something added to that. And I was like, why just stop at your family? Why not try to help as many people as you possibly can? And so I have a master's degree in healthcare administration. And at 23, as soon as I finished that master's degree, I worked in the Johns Hopkins medicine system. And I worked on the business side of the hospitals and healthcare. And so got two senior leadership roles fresh out of my master's degree that I did not deserve to have. I was massively underqualified on paper. They just were very desperate and the position was open for forever. And I was the only one crazy enough to take two jobs for the pay of one. But it was an awesome opportunity. It taught me a lot about business, and a lot of my responsibilities were strongly financial. And so I started to learn finances at a high level at a young age. And so thankfully, I took those systems that I was learning from a business standpoint, from my job, from the Hopkins, economic side of things, and just started implementing them in my personal life. And a couple of years went by, and I'm like, oh man, I'm getting really good results from this. And then, your friends using them as guinea pigs here and there, a couple of family members, I'm like, they're all getting really good results. I might have something here. And so I climbed the Hopkins ladder for about 5.5 years. The last position I had was I was the physician manager for one of our community hospitals called Howard County General Hospital. Took that position at 26 years old. So imagine being a Hopkins doctor who's like been there for like 50 years and me walking in the door. I'm like, yeah, this 26-year-old with 2 years of experience is now your new boss. It was an interesting experience, to say the least, but I was very fortunate for that experience. A big part of it being the project management experience I got, the mentorship I got. I reported directly to the president of the hospital and I had a dotted line to the CFO. And then the financial responsibilities that I continued to grow in. And so COVID hit and a lot of things happened at once, but I was like, I have way too much experience, expertise, education, resources, and opportunities now to like not start my own thing. And so I heard this podcast years ago by Ed Milet's marketing team that said your business, if you're a very talented individual, is at the intersection of your passion and your expertise, right? So I had a passion for helping other people, especially around their finances and not go through what my family went through. And I had expertise in finances. And so long story short, there comes JFF. And we're a little bit over 4 years old right now. We currently have about 138 active clients. I've got a team of 11 people working for us, and we've had a lot of success and a lot of fun along the way.
Awesome. What a journey. Um, how did you decide to leave? I don't even want to call it corporate America. You were in the hospital system. It's, they're for profit, non for profit, who knows? But that, I mean, the comfort of the paycheck and everything else, and start your own business, and and I mean, you've been doing this for 4 years now, right? So what's the journey been like for the last 4 years?
It's such a good question. So to answer the one about like what helped me leave, I guess. A story comes to mind right before COVID broke out, like the first week of March 2020. My wife and I, we were on vacation in Hawaii, and the business started in August 2020, officially, if you will. And so I'm laying on the beach. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. We're on this private little beach, and I'm just looking up at the sky, and I'm like, I don't want to go back to work. I'm sick of being on somebody else's schedule, somebody else's time, though the pay is good. Like, I'm ready to live this life for the rest of my life. And so I literally went back into the rental property. I called my financial advisor and I was like, when can I retire? And he ran some numbers. And you keep getting promoted, you keep saving the way that you're doing. He's like 56, which is great because most people can't retire until they're 65. So while that was cool to hear, it was also 30 years from the time that I was asking him. And excuse my language, I was like, F that. I'm not waiting that long, right? I'm not waiting that long. I want to live my life on my own terms, and have financial freedom and do it in a way that's extremely fulfilling. And so that's where the wheels really started to turn. And so we launched August 2020. and had some real fast success. It's a unique situation, but we definitely got shot out of a cannon when it comes to the entrepreneur success. There was very little struggle and has been very little struggle, since that day. And I think a big part of that was the confidence that I had in my finances, the ability to leverage the beautiful tool called money to, open up opportunities and increased impact and more income for me. And so when I left Hopkins, it was December 2020. I had, balanced both for 4 months. I had 18 months of reserves set aside. I had my books completely packed with a waiting list, waiting to hop on the books as soon as I got more time to take those clients on. And I had about $150,000 in credit available to me. And my wife had a stable income at the time. So all of those things, because I had confidence and control over my finances, it took all of the unnecessary stress and anxiety, the unnecessary fears out of the decision, right? The majority of people's stresses and anxieties are subjective, right? They're a gray area. They're non-factual information, particularly when it comes to money. And so I had the black and white, right then and there, and the confidence in my finances and my business because of that, where it was stupid for me to stay at Hopkins any longer, even with the rebuttal offers that they were giving me. And so I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. It just felt so easy to leave. Right? It felt so easy to leave. And maybe that's not everybody's story, but that's what's natural and authentic to me. And the journey from them has been awesome. Our second full year in business, we hit 7 figures and, haven't looked back since. And we do finances from a modern, fun, and easy and effective way, if you will, right? I think we didn't want to go the suit and tie route. We didn't want to go the pocket square accountant route. We wanted to, be relatable human beings that did this in a modern sense, but at the same time still get their shit done. You know what I mean? Like we truthfully believe that you can live your life and make financial progress in parallel. It doesn't have to be an or thing. And our slogan is money is just the tool, freedom's the goal. And it's impossible to live your dream life operated by your dream business if you don't have your money under control. And so we've worked with thousands of business owners at this point. And yes, have we had our ups and downs? 1000%. It's a volatile industry from time to time, but things that usually put other companies out of business have just been normal bumps in the road for us. Particularly because of the strategies and systems and the financial literacy and abilities that we have. And all we do is just teach that to our clients, which has been really cool to see them have incredible success with it as well.
Justin, I love the backstory. I think that it's really helpful for people to kind of like understand where you're coming from and what you've done. I also I love the deliberability. I don't know. I love how deliberate you were when stepping out from your employment and starting your business. I I want to take a step back and just go to the work that you do. Okay. Um, you said you help people with both personal finances and business finances, and obviously you have a system that's working for you and working for your clients. Can you take us through what does that look like for somebody on the personal finance side? So maybe they're acting like your parents did. Maybe they've got a decent income. I mean, there's definitely a lot of listeners to this podcast who they've grown their business to a certain level, right? But they may not have the proof on the personal side, right? It doesn't look like they're achieving success. There are people who may be struggling on the business side, and so I want to have both sides of that conversation. And I don't know which is the one you need to fix first, right? You need to fix your personal, your business first, but take us through what is your system around managing personal finances that's your secret sauce that can really help people who are listening to this to kind of think about their personal finances in another way.
For sure. Um, Great question. So let me kind of give the end goal here, right? And then reverse engineer it all the way back to that first step, which is getting the personal finances in order. So my company does financial coaching and strategy for business owners. And the company's name is Journey to Financial Freedom. And that's really truthfully what we're trying to do, get our clients to financial freedom. And so our definition of financial freedom is owning an asset or assets that make you enough money each month and year to cover your expenses and your lifestyle, whether you choose to show up or not. And that asset, most times, especially for everyone listening to this, is your business, right? So we want to optimize that business in a way to become what we call your financial freedom vehicle. It provides you that financial freedom. And so that's the end goal. So reverse engineering all the way back, right? And right before we hopped on and started recording, I was talking you through our 4-step process. And step one, the first step in our process when we work with our clients is help them implement the right systems around their personal and business finances, and also in parallel, build a more abundant mindset, right, around money, because your external wealth is just a reflection of your internal wealth, right? And so starting with the personal finances, I think the biggest mistake that people make is that they don't run a budget, right? Their form of budgeting, like you said, is just looking at their bank account, right? And making decisions off of that if they're even doing that in the first place. And so the second biggest thing is that they're muddying the waters with their personal and their business finances, right? Whether that's mixing the money, right, or mixing the goals. And then third, not having clear goals or a mission for your money, particularly on the personal side of things, right? And so we talk about having the right strategies in place, right? After that's step two. So step one is systems and mindset, and step two is strategies, aka like your goals. What are your goals and the strategies that go with them so you can accomplish those goals in the fastest, cheapest, most stress-free and trustworthy way as possible, right? And if I asked, everyone listening to this, list your top three personal financial goals and justify the prioritization of them, majority of people wouldn't be able to do that, right? And so we see that causes a lot of issues, especially for people that make a lot of money, because it's one thing to make a lot of money, it's another thing to keep a lot of money. They're two completely different skill sets, right? And the first one's almost useless without the second one. And so my advice here would be to, for one, separate your personal and business finances. This federal government looks at you as two separate entities, and so we should manage the money accordingly, right? And then part of that is having a P&L or a budget, whatever you want to call it, one for the personal and one for the business. And then learning how to pay yourself accordingly, right? So each month for the next 12 months, my systems, I know that I have set up, I know, and because they tell me exactly how much I need to pay myself to carry over to the personal side of things to not only cover expenses, but leave enough money to go after the goals that I have in place, which I'll get to here in a second. Right. And then speaking of the goals, having a mission for your money. If you don't have a mission for your money, right, the money's just going to come in and you're going to spend it erroneously or suboptimally, right? Like if it's not allocated to anything, either mentally or physically, like the money's going to come in, we're going to resort to old spending habits. And, most times those aren't optimal. And so understanding unique variables are really important. Like what make you a different, unique human being? Like what's your age? Where do you live? How much money do you make? What are your goals? What are your fears? How many kids do you have? Just to name a few. Those things need to be taken into consideration, particularly on the personal side of things, to then help us build, optimal strategies when it comes to their goals. There's a lot of blanket and general information out there when it comes to finances. And don't get me wrong, you can get decent results with that. But how you bridge the gap between decent results and optimal is understanding unique variables, right? It's to get custom strategy, because what works for you may not work for me, right? Because we're different, unique human beings. And so from there, then we can establish the right goals and then what we call cadence of accomplishments. Not only understanding what goals you need to accomplish, but cadence of accomplishments means which ones make sense to go after first, second, and third, and which ones you can run in parallel. For example, if you got a goals of fixing your credit and buying a house, we should probably fix the credit first, optimize the home purchase process, right? And then if you have goals to make more money and save more money, we could probably run those in parallel. They're probably both going to help each other if we do them both at the same time. And so that'd be my biggest advice when it comes to the personal financial side of things. Have the right systems in place and then have a mission for your money that actually makes sense for your unique situation.
Now, obviously, as a business owner, if you're trying to be more specific or intentional with how much money you take home from the business, there has to be money there to take home, right? So on the business side, what are you helping your clients do to make sure that that's happening? Are you focusing on growth? Are you focusing on on expenses? Is it just paying attention? Like where's the secret sauce on the business side to make it possible to consistently pay yourself what you need to on the personal side to achieve those goals?
Yeah, great question. So a big part of our strategy is We want to help you take control of your current situation first, right? It's the key. People think more money is the solution, but you're not going to out earn your poor money habits. You're not going to out earn your bad relationship with money, right? And so we take control of the current situation first, right? And because, like I told you before we started recording, people come to us like, it doesn't make sense for us to teach you how to make $30,000 more a month if you can't handle your current situation correctly, right? And so one of our slogans is more money is not the solution, dot, 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 until it is, right? And once we lay those foundations that I talked about, you have the right systems and strategies and mindset in place, then we shift our focus to the income. And most times the income comes from the business. So now it means we have to optimize the business. And so, going back to like the systems first, we also have to have a P&L, right? And goals for the business as well. And so we must manage the money on the business side of things to make sure we understand how much money we have coming in, how much money is going out, and what our cash flow looks like, right? Then from there, we can just understand what we're working with right now to hopefully make improvements down the road with. And so, really, what happens at that stage to increase income, and if you're doing it the right way, increase profit as well. You don't want to make more money and see just as little, if not less, which is a big issue business owners get into place or get into, when they're taking this venture on. And so it's really just like more so like business coaching and optimization at that point, now that the financial systems and strategies and mindsets are in place. And so the biggest mindset shift, particularly I think for your audience that we have to remember is it's one thing to be a great lawyer or attorney. It's another thing to be a legitimate business owner or CEO. Right. And it's a difference of working on your business compared to in your business. And so I think a big piece of advice that I think would be helpful for this audience is just understanding the hats that you wear in your business, right? And then how to do the best with those. And so, a lot of people listening to this are probably amazing attorneys, but they have a lot of room to grow when it comes to being a CEO or a business owner. And so I think that's a big bang for our buck. And just ask yourself, what do legitimate business owners do? And I think they have a strong infrastructure, right? So legitimate businesses know their org chart, if you will, and what hats that they're wearing in that and what hats other people are wearing and what the expectations are around those roles. So just like we got to take control of like the current situation when it comes to the finances, same thing with the business. All right, let's figure out what's actually going on here, who's supposed to be doing what, and then we can make improvements from there. And so getting organized in the business then allows us to then scale the business. And so, just thinking through this a little bit, our ideal client and business owners, they most likely have 4 departments. They've got their finance department. If you're making money and paying taxes, you got a finance department, right? Then we have the marketing department. Simply put, how do people hear about your services? Then we have a sales department. Once they hear about your service, how are we converting them? And then you have a fulfillment department, right? Or what people will call client experience sometimes. Like after you sell somebody something, now you got to fulfill that service, right? And so splitting your company up in those departments, understanding who's in what department, who's in charge of what department, what's expected of each person, and who reports to who will allow us to get control of the current situation to then look for areas of opportunity to improve. You don't want to scale on a broken foundation because you'll go out of business, right? But that's also not a license to drag your feet on getting things under control.
Yeah, really, I mean, a lot of stuff that you just threw at us, but when it comes to managing the finances in the business, what tools should a business owner be using? You mentioned a budget earlier and then a P&L. I don't know if they're interchangeable. Where where are they going to understand their numbers and understand where their focus should be, or setting those goals and expectations? I understand the mindset shift and becoming the business owner and spending money on spending time on the business, and the abundance mindset. Like a lot of the things that you mentioned make sense to me. I think the real question marks are like the things that people are afraid of, right? Like when you say the word budget, people run for the hills. So what
So
what are we
true.
doing there, and where's the
Yeah,
focus?
great question. So budget and P&L are interchangeable, right? They mean the same thing. And so where like I think something that comes to mind is like breaking the stigma around budgets, like the B word. You're right. People run for the hills when they hear it. And so Unfortunately, society has made budgets feel like constricting or scarcity mindset or like rules they don't want to follow. And like, unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth, right? When you're running the right systems, the right budget, right, it should empower you to live your life. It should empower you to spend your money, but in a calculated, controlled, and confident fashion, right? I tell people all the time, like, I want you to live your life. I want you to spend your money. I live my life. I spend my money, right? But I do it in a calculated, controlled, and confident fashion and make financial progress in parallel. And that is attainable for anybody if you're running the right systems, aka the right budget. And so I think the first thing is just splitting it up, like making sure what's on the business budget are business expenses and what's on the personal budget are personal expenses, right? And then from there, like the biggest thing to keep in mind is that like the only person that can take full control over your finances is you, not a software, not an app, not an accountant, not a financial advisor, not even a financial coach. Though those resources will help, the only person that is going to be able to take control and responsibility over your finances to ultimately get you to financial freedom is you. Right. And so why I say that is because a lot of people hide from this topic by like, no, my accountant's taking care of it. It's like, no, pal, your accountant is filing your taxes, right? And maybe putting together some type of income statement reactively, not proactively for you, right? Your financial advisor is handling your investments and your insurances, right? And they're only calling you once a quarter, right? And so an
If that.
app, I'm also not the biggest, yeah, if that, right? I'm also not the biggest fan of apps themselves, right? Because apps, for the most part, fully automate things, and full automation leads to neglect and ignorance. And as you can imagine, neglect and ignorance don't lead to best results for your finances, right? And so putting together a budget that you have to manage, at least at first, until you feel comfortable to delegate it one day, right, is where the sauce is at. And so, it doesn't need to be rocket science. Google Sheets works fantastic, right? And when it comes to a budget, all you need is an income section, an expense section, and a profit or loss section, which just means what's left over after you deduct expenses from income, right? And then there's just three columns, right? You want an actual column, what actually happened, a budgeted column, right? What was the plan or the target for the month? And then the variance column, which just tells you the difference between what actually happened and what we plan to have happened, right? And literally, if you have the right system, it only should take you 1 to 3 minutes a day to not only maintain that, but to get you best results. Every morning, I open up my budget, my personal and my business. I open up the bank statements. I plug the information in. I read the story the budget's telling me, and I go on with my day after 3 minutes with the information that I need to make optimal financial decisions. And so, moral of the story here is you must do this. Can your accountant help? Can your financial advisor help? Can apps help? Yeah, they're going to help, right? But if you're serious about financial freedom and you're avoiding stepping up and taking full responsibility of your finances, all you're going to do is have to revisit this work down the road at some point, right? And so utilizing a system that has skin in the game for you to actually open it up, check on what's going on, and then go on with your day. But it also doesn't have to be quantum physics. Google Sheets, 1 to 3 minutes a day, in and out, go about with your day.
Love it. And yeah, it could be as simple as that. And I just want to throw this out there. Like, if spending the time getting the information and putting it in the sheet is something you don't want to do, have a VA do that for you, and then you just spend the time analyzing what you're looking at instead of needing to go find it and put it in. But whether it's and whether it's Google Sheets, or I mean, hey, if you're using QuickBooks or something like that, and you've got an easy way to print that out. You can even in QuickBooks you can do a budget and see the variance, right? Like that can all be done for you in a way that you can view it and make decisions off of that. What I think is what I think is really important in what Justin's describing is that when we set out to do this the first few times, we're going to fail, right? We're going to
Yeah.
miss the budget. There's going to be a large variance because it's the first time you're starting to pay attention. But when you start to do it over and over again, it's going to change the decisions you're making. It's going to change the actions you're taking because you're paying attention. And I think, like, if we could look at the analogy of anything that you try to learn, right? Learning to ride a bike, learning to learn how to swim, or anything like that, right? No matter how much research you did before you started, you probably weren't very good at it when you first tried to do it. But if you stuck with it,
Right.
you may have gotten a certain level of proficiency. You might be a pretty good swimmer. You might be really good at riding a bike, but it wasn't that way when you started. this is going to be the same thing, right? Like it's going to be foreign to you when you start. You're going to be like, what? I'm spending money on what? This is money's going where? But then now you're paying attention. And I
Yep.
think that
Yeah.
the key to success at anything is to be intentional, to pay attention, and to have a way of measuring it. And I think that this kind of like marries all of that together, where you're setting a goal, you're paying attention to what's happening, and then you have a way of measuring, am I achieving this or not? And now you can start to make adjustments off of that. So I think a lot of people don't get started because we don't think we're very good at it, but that's not a really good reason to not get started because nobody's good at it when they start.
I agree. I love the quote, when things start to become expectations, they're no longer problems. So it's the expectation that it's going to be hard, you're going to suck at it, you're not going to like what you see for the first 90 days, let's say. Right. So now that's out of the way. Like, it's not a problem. It's the expectation. It's what needs to happen for you to get good at this. Right. A lot of people pray for the outcome, but they don't want to spend time on the input. And a big part of the input is what you're talking about. And we tell our clients for the first 90 days, in like the nicest way possible, like, we don't even really care what you're making or you're spending. We just want you getting into the practice of tracking and raising that awareness to increase the empowerment that you have around your finances. Exactly what you said. Exactly what you said. And so I want to go back to the point, though, that you made. I agree that at some point you may be able to hire a VA to do the updating, right? But a big issue with that is once somebody else is doing it for you, whether it's an app or a person, there's no skin in the game for you to actually open it up. Like I wish people would do what you said, hire a VA to update it and you just open it up to analyze it. But the issue with that is that people will never open it up to analyze it because they don't have to open it up to update it. Right. And they'll make up any excuse to avoid looking at the numbers. And so that's exactly what I do. I have my VA update it for me and now I analyze it. But that was after years of doing it myself to get into the practice of actually doing it, overcoming the fears and the anxieties and the limiting beliefs that make me avoid it in the first place. And that people all the time, they're like, I just need to get more discipline. It's like, maybe, or you just need to figure out why you're avoiding it. Inherently, you'll become more disciplined without even focusing on the discipline piece. Right. And so just wanted
Yeah.
to revisit that. You're exactly right. I wish everybody could do that. And you will be able to do that. But there's some value in you doing it for X amount of time. Right. And many reasons being what you just said. Right. When it comes to just you can't make improvements off of things that you're not measuring. Right. And you also can't make improvements off of things that you don't know fully what's going on with them. And so I think you absolutely nailed it. And what happens is after 90 days, 120 days, once you get past that initial fear, once you get past those limiting beliefs, maybe the negative self-talk about what you're spending money on, like, we can now start to see this with a clearer lens, right, and actually make improvements off of the objective information.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, when we look at it, it's why are we doing whatever we're doing? And if you look at that and you say, okay, have I been achieving this? Have I achieved any level of success that I'm proud of? And what ends up happening is that we realize, like, okay, I started my business because I wanted to have financial freedom or I wanted to have time freedom, yet I'm in the office every weekend. Or I just told my kid no to this thing that they just asked me to buy because we don't have the money for it, right? And you start to look at that stuff and you're like, okay, wait, I'm not actually achieving what this is supposed to be doing. And if that's the case, then what needs to get fixed? We always think, oh, it's just going to be one more client, right? I bring in one more client and that's going to make the difference. That's going to be what's going to allow me to take money home and to have it available in this way. But the reality is that you get one more client and that doesn't do it. And it's almost like the crack for business owners is just one more client, right? I'm just going to
Yeah.
get one more client and that's going to solve my problem. And the reality is it doesn't. And what really needs to
Yeah.
change is the way that we're approaching all of this, the way that we're looking at it, paying attention, measuring, and then being very intentional with it. It's really so true. Like if we think about it, everything, it's all the behavior, right? It's the behavior we need to control. I refer to the Profit First system by Mike Michalowicz in his book Profit First. I'm a Profit First professional. That whole book is based on human behavior being that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to check your bank balance. And that's not the place. We call that bank balance accounting. That's not the place to really measure what's going on in your life and in your business. That's an indicator of what's there today, but
Yeah.
you may have already spent it all, right? It might all be coming out tomorrow, or um, you might think you have a lot, and therefore you make a decision to buy something that you really can't afford because you made it off of the information of what was there today. It's really a terrible way to operate. But yet human nature, so many of us do it, right? Like maybe not everybody wakes up in the morning and checks their bank balance, but you're checking it once a week, once a month, right? You're logging in, you're checking it, and it really is irrelevant, right? It's not an indicator of anything other than just making sure you're not going negative. But you should have somebody on your team doing that, like making sure that you're not writing something against something you don't have. Um, but the real point is that we're all humans, human nature, and we all have the same fears, tendencies. We all have the same underlying infrastructure in our brains and the way that we operate. And you have to train yourself to operate differently. And I think that's really what Justin and his team are doing, is they're basically helping their clients to create new habits, to create new behaviors, to pay attention in different ways, to be intentional with their money, both on the business side and on the personal side. And I think it's very important. I think it's very effective, which is probably why he's having some success with it.
And yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think the next client is just a short-term band-aid over the real problem. And like I said earlier, if you're serious about financial freedom, you're going to be forced to return and do the work that we're talking about here today at some point, because it is the real solution. And so, super valuable conversation. And I think the biggest thing, though, is just understanding, like you said, that we're just human beings. And I like to say that most times we don't have financial problems, we have behavioral problems disguising themselves in our life as financial problems. And when you can get to the root of those behaviors, that's when you start to make long-term sustainable change.
Yeah. It's interesting because I recently saw, I don't know if it was an email or a social post. Somebody was talking about, some of the places where you can look to find some hidden money, right? And have you ever gone into your credit card statement, your bank statement, or your QuickBooks or whatever, and you're like, wait a second, I bought this software to try something, and it was like 3 years ago, and I never used it, or we used it for 30 days and then we stopped using it. We're still paying for the dang thing, right? Like how much of that is going on in everybody's business, right? When you start to pay attention to the numbers, it's going to force you to go to start looking at, hey, 1 second, what's going on here? And that is, subscription um spending is probably like the biggest find that anybody can have when you start paying attention, because you're going to suddenly realize, whoa, I'm paying for this. I had this myself. I just got an email from WP Engine. That's a website hosting company, right? Send me an invoice, 300 something dollars. I used a WordPress website on WP Engine to host our first law firm growth summit in December of 2019. We should have canceled that at the first renewal in 2020. We didn't. Now, to be fair, I thought, well, our next summit might be run on the same platform, but we didn't run our next summit on the same platform. That was in 2021. At that point, we should have canceled it. I finally now went online and canceled it. I was like, and this is something my team should have done, right? But I was like, why am I paying $300 a year? It's not a lot of money, but it all adds up. You're $300 here,
Adds up.
$300 there. You do that 10 times, you're at $3,000. What could I
Yeah,
do with $3,000 extra? I mean, even if I just threw it into my IRA,
I know. Yeah,
$3,000 a
you're right.
year in your IRA, we can sit here and do the math, but that's probably a lot of money by the time you're at retirement.
For sure. For sure. The small tweaks crack big safes sometimes. And so I think the biggest thing is that when people that's why we love our systems, that like they have to be in there 1 to 3 minutes a day. right? Because like you're going to open up your bank statement, not to check the balance, but to check the transactions and how it relates to the goals that you have, right? And while you're in there, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get with our new clients, they're like, I just canceled like thousands of dollars worth of subscriptions, not monthly, but like it adds up annually, like you mentioned. And so just that awareness, like just to be able to catch simple things will help you be able to, let's just say, find $5,000. And then we reinvest that back in the business and get $3 for each $1. Now we're at 15,000, right? All by just canceling a software that you didn't need, that you found from running a system that only takes 1 to 3 minutes a day. And so you're so right. I think people get caught up on like the big momentum movers, but like those big momentum movers are actually just results of these small tweaks that we make over time, right? Like when people die, like, it sounds morbid, but people die a slow death of just small slivers, right? Like when somebody gets diagnosed with heart disease one day or cancer one day, it like didn't happen from like one action. It was just these small slivers over time that added up, right? And
Yeah.
so paying attention to the minutia is important. It is important.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome stuff. Justin, we're just about out of time. So, full circle, I just want to come back and just ask you, hey, what's one parting piece of advice or wisdom that you want to share with our audience? And then how can they learn more about what you have to offer, get in touch with you? Is there something that you want to share with them today? I'll give you the opportunity to do that. Send them in your direction. If somebody, hey, they're at their limit, they realize, hey, I need help, I need something that's going to save me, or you've just inspired me, and I think that that I can work with you to really make meaningful and impactful change in my life and in my business. So just tell them where, what are the next steps to get in touch with you on that.
I love that. So piece of advice, you're a lot closer to financial freedom than you actually think, right? And the majority of your financial stresses are avoidable and fixable within 30 days if you have the right resources and partnership. And so I always like to say, before we talk about next steps, if this is something that you're leaning into, our services are one of those services where you're costing yourself more money by not having us than you would by having us, especially because we're a tax write-off too, as well, And so I'd like to just give that perspective. And so next steps wise, you can go to our website, and we'll have these links probably in the show notes, which is journeytofinancialfreedom.co, not .com. It was a difference of like $5,000 for that M to not be included for the domain. And then we'll put a booking link in the show notes as well with one of my team members. Her name's Stephanie Hall. She's an incredible human being, and she's the person that you could book a call with to figure out if and how we can help you, and go from there. And then find me on Instagram, Justin_Buonomo. Shoot me a follow and shoot me a message, and we can connect there.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it, folks. If you enjoyed today's conversation and you want more of it, every single Thursday, we're dropping a brand new interview with a expert industry leader, somebody who can make meaningful and impactful change in your life, or just you learn one or two golden nuggets from them. It is really worth it to come and join us for these interviews. And we have been doing this consistently since March of 2019. Rapidly approaching our 500th episode sometime within the next 12 months, hopefully. So we're going to have some big bang party around that. But if you're not subscribed to the show, you're not going to get notified that a new episode is dropped. So hit that subscribe button in your podcast player. This way you get notified, and this way you get the results of listening to our next episode, next guest expert that's coming next week. And of course, if you want to go back and binge, we have a ton of amazing content for you to listen to. We also have an incredible YouTube channel. You may have actually been watching this on YouTube. That's a possibility. You can go to YouTube, where we have not just the podcast repurposed on YouTube, but we also have a lot of content specifically for YouTube. As a matter of fact, I spent 2 days filming an entire year's worth of content that has all been released on YouTube, and really can help you with the growth and success of your law firm. So check it out at profitwithlaw.com/YouTube. That'll redirect you to YouTube, directly to our channel, and then hit that subscribe button there as well. Hopefully we get you as an avid follower, an avid watcher, viewer, listener, but more importantly, take action. take something from today's episode and decide to take action on it, whether it's booking a call with Justin and his team, or just taking something that we discussed. Maybe it's taking 5 minutes every morning to pay attention to your finances. Maybe it's taking some time once a quarter to really map out what is your financial goal for the quarter, setting that budget, and then doing the variance exercise to make sure that you're sticking to it. Or if you're not, figuring out why. There's a lot that we covered that you can just take one thing and implement in your life or your business. And I think that even if you do that, we will have had massive success in you changing the trajectory of your financial journey. As a matter of fact, there's this saying, if you get on an airplane in Los Angeles, California, headed to New York, and that airplane is off by just 1 degree, you're going to end up not in Miami, but somewhere in Mexico, right? Because over time, one little degree off can send you way off your destination, on a long journey. Well, we're on a long journey. It's the journey of life. So one little tweak of adjustment can make a massive impact on you being able to get closer to the goal you actually are trying to achieve. And I think that we have the opportunity every time we listen to a podcast episode, every time we take in a piece of content, to say, hey, what is one thing I'm going to do differently from this? And if we start doing that, that's going to really effectuate and make that change for you. Folks, we'll catch you next week on our very next episode here on the Profit with Law podcast. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Enjoy. We'll see you. We'll see you then.